Hi, and welcome back to the Black Dog Cast. Now, about a year ago, I probably didn't really know much about the whole area of men's work and men's coaching. Now I know quite a lot because I'm actually enrolled in a training course to become a men's work coach. But I think there's still an awful lot of people out there who don't know what men's work is. They don't know how it works and how it can benefit a lot of men out there. So to get into this in a bit more detail and answer some of these questions, my guest on this episode is Tim Neal. Now, Tim is a men's coach. He's actually one of the trainers on the program that I'm doing at the moment. And so we get into detail about everything to do with men's work, what's involved, what men's coaching looks like, how to know if it's right for you and what sort of benefits most men can get from this. We get into the detail, for example, on how to balance your own masculine and feminine energy and why maintaining a polarity of this is important in a healthy relationship. And then we also talk a little bit about how men's work relates to therapy and how it's different from therapy, but also how it can sort of coexist, alongside different types of therapy as potentially a more, accessible and scalable way for men to dip into a group and sort of, share their problems, get support from fellow men, for all of that good stuff. So, let's get to the podcast and meet Tim. All right, Tim, welcome to the podcast.
Alex, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So where are you coming from today? Somewhere in Australia?
Yeah, Melbourne, Australia.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
I went there a long time ago. I like typical British thing, went to Australia after uni for 6 months, but it was when the Sydney Olympics were on. And so I went to the Olympics and then I had some family in Melbourne and I really enjoyed Melbourne. It was a lovely spot.
Right on, man. Yeah, well, it's a great city. It's coming into our winter here, so it's getting a little bit chilly, but yeah, I've lived off and on in Melbourne, traveled a lot and actually grew up in Perth on the west coast, but settled here for now in Melbourne and lived here, like I said, off and on for over a decade. So it's a good place.
Yeah, it's got a really good cycling scene in Melbourne. I don't know if you've encountered that, but there's a really big road cycling scene and a really good coffee scene, and it's a good place to be a bike rider.
Yeah, well, I'm on the coffee scene, cycling or riding myself, not so much. However, a good buddy of mine, he's also a fellow Brit. He loves it and he tells me all about it too. So there's a Bay Road which goes around the bay. Supposedly.
Yeah, I've ridden around there a little bit. I was just amazed at the packs of cyclists that are out on a Saturday, Sunday morning. Yeah, massive.
Yeah, massive.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, look, we're gonna dig into the whole world of men's work and men's coaching. I guess the first question is just, for somebody that doesn't know, what on earth is men's work?
Yeah, right in the flame to begin.
Yeah,
with.
right.
Yeah. What is men's work? It's a good question, and it can be really general, but to me, men's work is men gathering and doing their deeper work. They do deeper work and look like sharing, offering support and challenge, overcoming their own internal issues, challenges, struggles, and making that a consistent sort of effort, like whether it's coaching or groups. That's what men's work is to me, like healing and growing as men and coming together in a container, as we call it, in a structured format to be able to do that work.
Mm-hmm. And so how'd you get into this?
Yeah, well, you want the short version or the longer version?
Well, I don't know. We got some time. Maybe the medium version.
Yeah.
How about
that? middle version. So I was into personal development. I remember as about a 10-year-old, I'd sit in the back of my mum and dad's SUV or four-wheel drive, as we call it here, and they'd play these motivational tapes, and I'd be staring out the window, just not thinking much of it. And I was thinking, I don't want to listen to another dude talk about stuff. But it was sinking in. And
hang on, this was your parents were playing these, or you were playing them? Your parents were playing them.
So they were into sort of the personal development scene.
Right.
And then I grew up playing sport. Cricket being one, you'd understand that being a fellow Brit, but rugby, especially rugby league.
Okay.
And everything was geared towards being an athlete. So I just started understanding as a young teenager that performance, what that took. And part of it was developing me personally, physically, mainly at that age. So I just started gratitude journals, and I heard bits and pieces around just being positive and whatnot. And I still believe in that stuff. I have different ways to approach it now. And that was my journey as a teenager into the personal development world. And then just bit by bit, I transitioned out of being an athlete in the sort of, early 20s actually, mid to early 20s. And had already started in the personal development, in the fitness industry as a personal trainer and, speaker, mentor and coach and whatnot there. So it was a natural progression. But the whole time I was always looking at ways to improve, just performance-wise, as a lot of men do. How do I get better? How do I improve everything in my life? And I started going on my journey. I read the books, lots of books. I did the different courses, some big mentors of mine. Tony Robbins, I was in the Tony Robbins world for many, many years, still am on some level. Dr. John Demartini's been another great mentor, Brendan Burchard. So these big guys in the sort of personal development world, I was just learning from. And then I transitioned out of the fitness world into coaching because I wanted more freedom. I wanted to be able to live a lifestyle that's not getting up at 5 a.m., getting into the gym and staying to 9 p.m. It was just wearing on me. So my partner and I at the time decided, no, we're gonna transition. So I transitioned from being a personal trainer because my clients kept on talking to me about what's happening outside of the gym. It wasn't about the push-ups and the squats. It was about what's happening in their marriage or in their career or how they're feeling internally with anxiety or depression or, just what was real for them. And I'd luckily had some really amazing coaching. I was struggling on a couple of fronts, one in the relationship I was in and also in business. I just wanted, to grow my business at the time in the fitness world. And I'd had some great coaching. I thought I could do this. I could help people, not just with their fitness, but with what they're doing, what's happening internally. So I transitioned. I gave myself, I think it was 6 months back then, to transition from fitness into coaching. And then ever since then, that was 2014, so over a decade, or coming up a decade. This is what I've been doing. I've been coaching and traveling and enjoying life with struggle, with some struggle in there. Don't get me wrong. And then transition through different, I guess you can call it niches, but just where I was drawn to in the coaching world. Yeah. Started with more health coaching because I was very familiar with that. And then it started going down more the mental health track, helping mindset, motivation, relationships, and then landed on men's coaching. And that's what I do now, men's coaching and run men's groups. Yeah. Cool.
Do you think that the whole sort of area of men's work and men's coaching seems to be, it's definitely becoming more popular and more talked about. I think it's still quite niche. Do you think is this a sort of factor of, people talk about a crisis of masculinity and the sort of issues that young men and boys especially go through now? Like, is that why we're talking about this? Because it's a big thing?
Yeah, I think it is a big thing. We all have our own struggles. And yes, there's the societal viewpoints on masculinity in young boys and even the femininity and young women as well. And and not even speaking to masculine and femininity as a gender. Yeah. It's a deeper dive, but as an energetic. I think it's a big thing. I think, yes, the world is on some level waking up. In other ways, not so much. And this is just my personal opinion. But a lot of what I know about human behavior is driven by pain, and especially men, extreme pain. Like, it has to take a lot for a guy generally to step in to get coaching and to get support, because there's a part of us that, no, I can sort this shit out myself. I can fix it. Yeah. And that, what I found, can be really constricting. It wasn't until I started reaching out for support and started getting out of my own way and dropping my guard and just realizing, hey, you know what? I'm struggling here.
Mm-hmm.
Every person, every human, man or woman, or however you identify, does. And it's okay to speak up and speak out. And I think that's where the modern man is different than past generations. And so many factors that contribute to that. But I do feel it's a big thing. I feel like it's gaining traction. And I'm very aware that I can be in my own little bubble of this sort of men's world, men's coaching, doing this podcast with you and different programs and groups and working with guys who are ready. And that's
in your own bubble, thinking that, you're in this bubble of guys who are all actively doing this work, right? And who are showing up and wanting to go deep and talk about the stuff that's going on in their lives. And what you mean that you sort of, because you're in it all the time, you're thinking that's how it is, when in actual fact, there's a shitload. The majority of blokes out there are not doing this, are they?
Right.
And they probably should be.
Well, you're spot on. Like, the world, the reality, we create our own reality in a way. So, I'm one of 5 boys. So I grew up playing rugby, one of 5 boys, very masculine orientated culture. And, my brothers, one thing I love and I get along with them all beautifully is that we just love and respect each other and really accept who we are. We're all so different. So yes, that's what I mean. Like, I'm in this bubble of I could easily see it as either, all men are starting to wake up and starting to do this deeper work, but that's not the case. I think last time I checked, it was only 3 to 5% of men actually deepen into men's work. And that's, right. I thought that was a healthy figure, 3 to 5%. I'd say closer based on, just my personal interactions. It's probably closer to 2 or 3%.
Yeah.
The guys who are ready. And a big emphasis that I put on, how I operate in the world and who I am is when people are ready, they're ready. We're never ready, just ready enough. But guys who are ready will step in. We'll ask for the support. We'll, join the program. We'll join the group. We'll reach out to the coach or the support structure. And for everyone else, full acceptance. Like my brothers, we're not all in this personal development, men's group, men's work scene. I am. My other brothers, I love and respect them, but they're not into it. And that's okay. And that's a really good mirror for me. We had a beautiful family get together a couple of weeks back, and first time in 8 years or something that we all came together, and it's just an honoring of like, hey, that's where they're at. So in my ecosystem, that's sort of the little sort of snippet of what we're talking about on a global scale of like, not every man's into it, and that's okay. They're all on their own journey. And when I let go of the judgments of that just liberated me. It helped free me up to do my deeper work at a new level and to help those guys who are ready.
Yeah. You mentioned that, guys sort of coming to this when they're ready, which brings up the question of how do you know if you're ready? And also, I think about this and I think, I started doing this work in my 40s, right? And what would my life have been like if I'd done this work in my 20s?
Yeah.
I guess you can't force somebody to do this. They have to do it when they're ready, right?
Of course. The old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yeah.
We can try and drag people. And I gave up saving people and men a long time ago. It's not my job.
Right.
I'm not a saver. I can be an ear to listen. I can be present. I can even be a guide if they're open to that. But I'm not a hero or savior here. And the short answer to that question is pain. I touched on it earlier. When there's enough pain, people move. Now, that's not the only driver though. Pleasure's the other one. At the most basic level, pain and pleasure. You look at the animal kingdom. So often, a mentor of mine, Peter Crone, talks into life will give you what you need to grow. He says it's slightly different, but that's sort of the adage is life will call it what you will, universe, whatever you believe there. It will give you people, situations, circumstances and events to help you grow. And then men's work and men's coaching is a vehicle for that, that's specifically for men. Because there's a different energy I found that when men sit in circle or men sit together and they feel safe, that's transmuted and transmitted. Then if it's, if it's not in a men's work, if you're just with your buddies down the bar or the pub, it's a very different circumstance than if you're sitting in a circle or a group, or even with women. I love women. And there's a different energy there. I know for me, I'll speak of myself, that I show up a lot more congruent now than I ever have because of this work with women, but there's also a different energy. Where in the past, there'd be this pleaser energy that I have to show up a certain way because I'd want to be attractive to them. Now it's less about what I need to be for them and more about who I need to be for myself.
Which for a lot of men probably makes them more attractive.
Spot on. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other part, in addition to sort of, you're ready for this when you're ready, and quite often that involves some pain and suffering, and could be a mental health crisis, whatever. You also need to know that this sort of stuff exists, right?
Yeah.
And I again, I think even if I had known that this sort of stuff existed in my 20s, would I have like put two and two together and realized, that it would be useful to go do it? Probably not, because I was probably still a bit of a dickhead, but right, exactly. That's, and whether it's men's work or other forms of self-help, whether it's going to get therapy or whether it's, and knowing that you need to take, antidepressant medication or whatever, like a lot of this is just knowledge and getting it out there in the world and telling people, and telling men especially, because they don't talk about this stuff, like, hey, here's all this shit out there that might be able to help you. And so even if you don't need it right now, you might need it at some point, right?
Yeah. You have to know the lake exists before you go there, right? And drink from it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And knowledge is the gateway to progress.
Yeah.
But we need to apply that. And that comes back. Like, I was resistant to men's work like most guys. Initially, a buddy invited me along to a circle. I was like, oh yeah, I know I've been in this sort of world of like personal development and growth, and I'll maybe. And then one day it's just like, what the fuck, why not?
Did it make you feel uncomfortable right at the very beginning when you first showed up? Like, how did that feel?
Yeah, uncomfortable, man.
Right,
sitting
I know.
there and talking and absolutely like, oh, what's happening here? It's the fear of the unknown. What actually happens in a men's circle or a men's space? And yes, I was there with a good friend of mine. I trusted him, but it was uncomfortable. I felt nervous. I felt anxious. What am I going to talk about? Am I going to fit in? And that's that biological need to connect and want to fit in. So it was uncomfortable.
And how long did it take to get over that?
Still doing it. No kidding. Look, it probably took a good 18 months for me personally to really like deepen and to go like it was baby steps. The first year I wasn't that committed. I'd jump in if there was something, really it was just driven by my pain. Like there's something that I really had to handle. Yeah. And it was convenient. Then I'd go along to a men's group. And then after about a year and a half, I started realizing, wow, there's more to this than just solving problems. It's not just about solving problems and solutions, which is the ultimate masculine. It's about support. It's about challenge. It's about the ongoing, like a brotherhood can give you, and how that flows out into your life, into other relationships, into how you're showing up with integrity and being present to life and yourself. It's how you're showing up in your career or your mission or your purpose. And I started realizing this is what I've been missing in my life. This depth of trust of myself and other men was available to me if I kept on showing up and kept on doing my best. Just doing my best, that's it. And that's what I talk to men about every week.
Yeah.
Is just keep doing your best. That's all you can ever do. And doing your best can be one day just showing up and sitting there and listening. Another day it may be showing up and sharing your deepest fears. Another time it may be, challenging a guy, or offering a guy really empathetic and heartfelt feedback. So there's different ways that it shows up, but as long as the intentionality is there and your awareness builds over time, then men's groups, men's coaching, men's spaces can be such a powerful and really valuable tool to grow as a man and to heal the past.
Yeah. So for somebody that hasn't been exposed to this before, can you sort of explain a little bit about like what does this look like in practice? Like if somebody, if they find a men's group and they, they're thinking about going along, like, well, I guess I've got two questions. First of all, in your sphere of what you do, what does it look like? And then the second part is, if you look at the, are there other different forms? What does the landscape of men's work look like?
Yeah, appreciate the distinction. I'll start with the second is, yes, there are many different types of men's groups, let's call them. And I've been fortunate to do a lot of work there in the States, but also here in Australia. Mm-hmm. And they're different. They're all different. So the landscape, it's really about, let's call it support. It's just it's support group. Now, some groups have a bit more fire and heat, is what we call it, where there's a bit more challenge involved. And I personally like those groups. But what a good men's group, what I believe is, it's this combination of support and challenge. One, we could look at support as more the feminine energetic of that real openness and that real, like, we have you, the empathizing, like you're heard, you're seen, you're understood. And that was so healing for me, and it still is. That part of me, the feminine, like being nurtured by like conscious, heartfelt, powerful men, like guys who I respect and fucking trust and love. Mm-hmm. So that support element. And then the other side of it is the challenge, is that fatherly love, or the masculine within us. It's, hey man, I see your greatness. I see where you can take more responsibility here. I see you stepping up and stepping in and sharing more of who you are in your world and challenging men. So they're the two sort of ingredients that I look to lead with in my groups. And I'm fortunate I get to lead many groups now on this support and challenge, and having a beautiful blend. Some guys, depending on their history, their past, their wounds, their programming, and also their reality and their circumstances in their world, may need one or the other more. They may need, and generally what I feel a great men's group is about is really connecting to the feminine first, helping guys understand their own emotions, helping guys understand thought and let go of thought, all feminine sort of nuances. And that was a big part of my journey, especially emotionally, building and growing my emotional awareness and intelligence. But then also after that, if they're open and if they're ready to say, hey, are you open here for a growth opportunity or for a challenge or a stretch, as we call it, to really help guys grow. So one hand is the healing, the other is the growing, and this interplay between both consistently and continuously.
Yeah. And then, okay, so somebody shows up at the group and what happens?
Well, letting depends which group, but here's the general state of affairs. You'll show up and a good group, and I can't speak for all the groups. There's obviously thousands of men's groups and led in different ways by different guys. First, you've got to be a man. But secondly, once you self-identify as a man, usually there's some element of sharing, of course, just sharing at different depths. Some of it's just more like what's happening in in some groups are more just surface level stuff. Hey, I did this today, or this is what's happening in my life, which is important for context. But what I've found is the deeper we go, the more that we can grow and heal. And that takes courage, it takes vulnerability to let guys in, to just speak what's like your deepest truth. And that takes it takes new learnings. Example is this morning, had a letter group, and, the confidentiality is really important. So speaking of your own experience, not all the other brothers' experiences, that's something most men's groups, or all good men's groups I've had will have some guidelines, speaking of our own experiences, confidentiality, taking full responsibility, We don't need to perform.
Yeah.
A lot of guys, including myself, come from like a performing background. I've got to perform, and that's how I'm validated and through achievement, and that's how I'm loved. A good men's group, there's no performance. Often guys will emote, whether it's, through different emotions will come through. So good men's groups, everything will be honoured and accepted. So that's sort of what happens is there's usually sharing. A lot of the groups that I'm a part of and lead have practice, some sort of practice. And what I mean by that is breath work and or meditative work to deepen, for us to deepen as men, to become more present, to expand, to sensitize, to strengthen, to regulate our nervous systems.
Yeah.
Because I believe in the somatic approach, not just the psychology approach.
And this is, I think, a big challenge for a lot of men is just knowing what's going on in their body, right? And I know this is one of the things that I've found the hardest probably of getting into this space is when somebody says, what are you feeling in your body? Like, what are you feeling? Where are you feeling it? What emotions are behind that? That's fucking hard to begin with, right? Right
on. It is. I feel you there, man.
I'm getting better at it, for sure. I can feel the progress, but I just think that on its own, I think is super hard for most men just to connect, to get out of their head and to connect with what's going on in their body and then to be able to put words around it and describe what's going on in their body, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That really lands because that's been my journey too. And when was it? A couple of days ago, I ran a group and every guy, bar two, there was only a smaller group, probably 10 or so. 8 of the 10 guys struggled with what you're talking about initially. Now, a lot of the guys are more practiced now, but like anything, it's like a skill, right? No different than playing a guitar, right? The first few times when you're learning, it's hard getting your fingers and the calluses and just like learning. But then after practice, we get better feeling into our body, which is known as the felt sense. If we're not conditioned to do so, is like anything, it's a skill. It takes practice. And I'm really glad to hear that it's feeling better for you now already. And it was the same journey for me. That was revolutionary, what we call a check-in. So a good men's group, coming back to your original question, we'll check in. And it may be check in more on the surface on like what's happening, but some men's groups and the ones that I'm a part of and lead, we check in with sensation and emotion, like what's happening in our bodies. Wow, I'm feeling this tension in my lower back and, this anger, this energy of anger, I feel that in my jaw or my chest. I'm feeling sadness, feeling tired, like positive, negative and neutral. I'm feeling this joy in my heart. I'm feeling what's real for you in your body. And that's moving energy, like you said, moving energy from your head down into your body. Because thought is the language of the mind, feeling is the language of the body. And if we're just used to thought, let's think more, let's think about this more, then that's what we're conditioning consistently. So a lot of the work that I've done is letting go, dropping awareness into the body, and then integrating the masculine and feminine within our self, the energetic, so we can show up more fully as men. So we're more present, more peaceful, more calm, live more in integrity and create incredible results in our lives, because that's what we're here for as well, our human experience. Yeah. Forgot what I was going to say now. You made me my mind go off somewhere. Well, here we go. We could feel into the body, Alex. Oh yeah. No, I was in my head, mate. That's the problem. Yeah. No, I remember now. Some people might sort of listen to this and think, well, that's what we have friends for, right? If we've got good close friends, that's what they're there for, to talk about our problems. Do you find either yourself or from people that you've coached that through doing this type of work, they take it away and then that changes the relationship that they have with their friends and their friendships become deeper? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've found that to be true in my life, that doing this type of work as a man just it spills over into all the areas of your life, and especially relationships at whatever level, you know, whether it be romantic or platonic or parenting or work colleagues. And one of the big fundamentals of men's work, and there's a few different sort of, I guess, topics or themes that are brought into a lot of the groups and circles, but one is presence. It's a big piece of what I feel men need in this world is a deeper presence. And when I mean that, I mean presence of self. And part of what we spoke about, that what we call emotional sensing check-in, the check-in with the body, is becoming more present and deepening. And when we're deepening, we are felt differently by others. There's a different energetic exchange. So that is like cause and effect. The relationship and the energy between those two people in that moment will change based on deepening for a man if he wants to be more in his masculine. If he doesn't want to be in his feminine, you don't want to deepen. You actually want to move and flow.
Yeah.
So it depends on what you need in each moment. And my relationships have got so much more fulfilling and deeper since moving into getting serious about my men's work and now leading it.
Yeah. On that point about, you talked about whether somebody needs to deepen the masculine or the feminine side. They might be stronger in one or the other and need to work on one or the other. How do you figure that one out? How do you know that?
Well, at our core, I believe, and I'll give a resource here. A great resource is a guy called David Deida. I know you've heard of him, but if you're listening and you want to understand sort of the masculine and feminine at new levels, pick up some of David Deida's work, Deida. You know,
I'll put
a very well-known book is The Way of the Superior Man.
Yeah.
There are many years ago when I was having when I was getting coached, and by my first coach, he mentioned this, and it just fascinated me. Like, what's this masculine and feminine? And what am I? And how do I? And he put me onto this book. And the first time I read it, I was like, oh, I don't really get it. What is this? Like the language, and really.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I think I got like halfway through and put it down. I was like, nah. Right.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah. And it's like what we spoke about, like when we're ready, we're ready. You know, you're ready for half of that book. At that time, I was ready to take in a little bit of that information.
Yeah.
And over time, as I grew, I said, oh, maybe there's more to this. So the masculine, we're talking about energies here, the energetic within, not so much about the gender. Now, generally, 80 to 90% of guys, men, have got a more masculine nervous system, and women have the feminine. However, that's not always the case. And we have both. We have both the masculine and feminine within us. So a really great way, if you're just completely new to this and you're curious on how do I find this out, is through your behaviors is a good start. Like, what are you driven towards? Are you driven towards like goals, direction, purpose? Like when you're feeling really great within yourself, leadership, that is more the masculine energetic within us. Now, on the flip side, if you're driven more towards sort of nurturing and flow and feeling sense, then that's more the feminine. Now, we have both. And what I believe in is integration of both.
With both being equal or not necessarily being equal?
Because one is our core, so we're going to feel better within that. But also not so much equal. So it's not like a 50-50. It's more about what do I need when.
Right.
So an example may be, in a conversation, maybe you're with your partner and you're having a conversation. If she's a feminine or he, and you or I are now masculine, then we want to be leading that. And that's going to create a polarity between us and her and her feminine. So I need my masculine to step in, to lead, to take charge, to be direct in consideration of the feminine, not just my way or the highway. That's what's known as like a level 1. Now, on the flip side, if she's very directive, maybe she's, got something happening at work and she really needs to be in her more masculine, that's a beautiful thing. A couple of things, we may not need our masculine in that moment. We can drop more in our feminine. So that creates a polarity. And this is just at play in a relational dynamic.
Yeah.
But even in your life, asking yourself, what do I need more now? I just need some nurturing. Here's an example from my life, man. When I'm feeling like emotional, there's my feminine crying out like, feel me. So I go and have a bath. I would have never done this years ago. I would have been like, screw that, man. I'm not doing that. But now, and this is the integration of like, oh, wow, feeling really sad. I'm feeling really shameful. Got fear. Okay, let me go and nurture that. And there's lots of different ways to do it. One is just sitting with it, checking in. That's nurturing the feminine within. I just mentioned a bath. I go and run a bath, beautiful, hot.
Some candles. Some
candles. You got it, man.
Essential oils.
I do all the feminine stuff. It's beautiful. See, I would have judged that in the past. Now I drop into it and I really feel that, and it feels great because it nurtures my feminine.
Yeah.
And then I show up the next day in what I need. I'm more resourced. I'm more nurtured. So my feminine and the masculine, and this is what a big part of it, I feel deeper men's work and busting that old paradigm. Now, using some of that paradigm of masculinity, but bringing it into what serves the moment for myself or us as men, and also those that we're in relation to, and also something bigger than ourselves, whatever we want to call it. I'll just call it the universe or spirit. And that becomes the dance.
Yeah. When you talk about that sort of old way of doing things, you mean the sort of traditional stereotype man where it's, I guess it would be like 100% towards the masculine energy and not recognizing the feminine energy at all.
Yeah. Good way to put it. Like it's an unconscious, but just, and that was set up, right? It was set up, through society and through different, events and whatnot in history, but also, and roles. But it's really just about, now I believe we all have a role to play, but not stuck in a role. Like he has to do this, she has to do that. So that old sort of paradigm, and the world has already shifted that. We don't need to shift it. It's already, again, life will give you what we need to grow and expand. And I believe that's already happening. And it's not about going so far the other way where men lose their backbone. So
this is sort of nice guy syndrome, right?
Exactly. Nice guy, the pleaser, over feminize and just lose their backbone and then have no strength, have no purpose. And how I teach this is strong spine, soft heart.
Yeah.
And that really lands when I created this, it really was what I was practicing and I do every day. This strong spine, but also a soft heart. So this is a great way to integrate both. Like, okay, my heart, my soft heart can be the feminine within, an open, nurturing, caring, empathetic, compassionate, loving heart. But also it's supported by a strong spine, a man of integrity, of purpose, of direction, of honoring my own needs, setting boundaries, and feeling strong and centered. So the word to write down and underline is centered. How centered can I be in any moment, which can be sometimes moving more towards the feminine, sometimes moving more to the masculine, but also honoring my core of masculinity because I'm a masculine-driven guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Makes sense?
No, it makes sense, and it's a fascinating way to think about it because I guess I'd read Data's book. One of the things I took from that I think was really important was the idea of maintaining that polarity in your relationship, right? And, within a marriage, for example, it's really important to have a strong polarity. But in I'm sure a lot of people's situations, my own included, it's very easy to become far more equal, right?
Yeah.
And being conscious of like, okay, well, how do I create more polarity? Has been new for me. But I guess thinking about it in the sense of just your own energy and like the times when you need to dial up, the masculine or the feminine is fascinating.
Yeah. I like that little nuance you said, a dial, and it can be that simple. And I haven't experienced a relationship or know of a relationship that doesn't have depolarization.
Yeah.
It's just part of what happens between two partners.
It's part of modern life as well, isn't it? I think modern life throws so much shit at you that depolarizes you both.
So you may be 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years in, and there's no passion. Right? This is a common dynamic, and it's because of depolarization. So the question becomes, how do you turn the dial? And there are some sort of fundamentals that work, and then there's the nuance of the relationship itself. But it's a really important thing to understand is that if we want to, and it's by no means 100% always there, but if we want the attraction, if we want the passion consistently in our relationship, our relationships, then we need to know, coming back to what we mentioned earlier, that knowledge. We need to understand this first, and then, but more importantly, we need to practice it.
Yeah.
And that's what I've worked so hard and continue to this day, is to practice it and be an embodiment of this work, not just words.
Yeah.
And understanding.
So putting you on the spot there, what are the things that somebody could do in their relationship if they need to dial up that polarity? Yeah.
Well, first thing is understanding, okay, what pole is my core? Is it more the masculine or more the feminine? Now, I'll speak in generals here. Like I said, 80-90% of men, it's going to be more the masculine. Now, they may be depolarized based on a range of factors. So they may feel like, I don't want to lead. But in one word, men, whenever I coach on this, is like a yes. And I've learned from my own experience, man, is to lead more. Like lead.
Yeah.
Do not allow her to keep leading, because it puts her in the masculine. It emasculates the man generally, and he has to fall into his feminine. Now, there may be a little polarity there because it is the opposites, but they're not in their core. So you'll feel deeply unfulfilled, empty, lost. Now, the byproduct of that usually is breakup, divorce. She doesn't feel safe. He doesn't feel free. She doesn't feel connected because he's not leading. So for man, the number one rule is to lead. Now, you can't lead another if you don't lead yourself. So work on you. Shameless plug. Get into men's groups. Get into men's coaching. Like, that helps you lead yourself. So therefore you can show up more fully embodied as a man and lead the relationship and lead her. Now, leading, little asterisks, with consideration, with love and care for her. That doesn't mean being a nice guy and people pleasing and being a doormat and walking on eggshells. No. That means, here's what I want. Here's how we're going to go about it. How do you feel?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. It's a great idea. Oh, no, it doesn't feel good. Okay, let's open the discussion up.
Yeah.
There's a different energy there. Does that make sense? Do you feel that?
Were you asking me, or was that an example of what to say to your other half?
I was asking you this time, man.
No, it does totally. And it kind of answers the question that come to mind when you were talking about this. And, what would somebody who was of a more feminist point of view, they might react to somebody saying, oh, well, men need to lead in a relationship. They might take that the wrong way and think that we're talking about those old traditional masculine values that didn't take into account a woman's point of view and them being equal in a relationship, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I hear that. And there's utmost empathy and respect for people's perspectives. And what I'd say is, you've got to find what works for you. And Data again talks about level 1, level 2, level 3. That level 1 is about me. It's all about us. It's all about the individual. It's egocentric. Level 2 is more that 50-50, that equality, which you were talking of. Yeah. That's okay. That's part of a dynamic. But what I'll share is what I found in my life and the guys and women over the years that I've worked with is staying in that equality, that level 2, 50-50, that we both, and we are equal, but we're different. We're different. We have different strengths. Hasn't been fulfilling. It becomes transactional. Polarity there's no polarity. There's depolarization because we're the same. We're trying to be the same. Yeah. As opposed to, look at a magnet. There's a negative and a positive. There's night and dark. There's inhale, there's exhale. So there's a polarity to life. So we've got to find that polarity. And that's where level 3 comes in taking some of those roles and then dropping them into a modern life and understanding that it's not just the role, it's the energy more so.
Yeah.
And that in any given moment, the equality conversation isn't going to serve. But some of the time it does.
So this could apply equally if a man was a stay-at-home dad and looked after the kids and did all the housework. It's about energy, not about practical day-to-day roles, right?
Yeah. The roles can play with this. You play with it with the roles, but absolutely, the stay-at-home dad, he could be seen to be in his feminine more of the day, looking after the kids and nurturing. And perhaps a woman is out there in her business, you know, more linear, more directional, more purpose-driven, you know, making deals, making sales, aiming and firing at goals, which would be more the masculine. Not a problem. That's beautiful if that's going to work for the relationship and the family dynamic. My question would become, what happens when they come into connection?
Yeah.
Is he a masculine guy or is he a feminine guy? More at his core. And same question for her. And then when they come into connection, is there role reversal, which could serve or not?
Mm-hmm.
So what often happens is there'll be some role reversal in a connection. Yeah. And then a behavioral adaptation of that for men is being like a nice guy, being a pleaser.
Yeah.
Like we've spoken about.
But it, again, to use that example, could a relationship like that still have polarity if the guy was just more feminine and the woman had more of those masculine traits and they brought that into their intimate relationship? That could still be polarity in a sense, and that could still work, right?
Yeah, and what I've found is it's a good way to look at it is depending on the core, like what the essence, what the energetic core of that person is, will dictate longevity of that.
Right.
So
if somebody's going against their core, then it's not going to. Okay.
Yeah, he will feel empty, and she won't respect him over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because and some of the time it's even hard to articulate, but it'll be more felt like, oh, I'm just unfulfilled or unhappy, and she'll be like, well, he's got no balls, like loses respect because I have to lead all the time. I have to take the masculine pole because he and again, you know, I'm a full fan of 100% responsibility. Mm-hmm. What's hers and his responsibilities to this dynamic? Okay, and let's start from that place. So even though there could be a polarity, what I found is the longevity of that connection won't be there because they're living outside of their core, like consistently, and that gets tiring. It gets exhausting for both. Yeah,
yeah. I guess this sort of brings up the topic of whether, do you think that people misinterpret men's work and they think it's, you know, somehow associated with more toxic masculine movements, sort of red pill, you know, all that, getting into that dodgy area?
It's a good question, man. Like, to answer this, I'm going to track back a few years. How did I feel about it? Because I think that's without asking somebody who's outside the bottle. We're sort of inside the bottle right now. Yeah. So I don't have that perspective. One, I didn't know too much about it. So the knowing is important. But once I did know, and this is actually some of the narrative that I hear is, oh, men's work is too feminine, which is leaning too much on the emotionality and the support perhaps.
Right.
And letting guys sort of, you know, show up half-assed or not take charge in their life and tackle their goals and really go after what they want in life because of, you know, pain and wounding and trauma and programming. That's some of what I've heard, and that's a big part of, for me personally, how I like to go about the men's work is there's that element, like to speak again, of support and challenge. Mm-hmm. It's not just about getting in touch with our emotions and feeling and, oh, that's enough. Like, that's a beautiful starting point. And then what are we actually going to do with that in the world? How are we going to move?
Yeah.
How are we going to act, apply, execute, which is bringing in the challenge and the masculine.
Yeah. I'm not sure that answered the question, but it was great anyway.
Ask the question again if you like.
No, it's just I'm just curious how it does relate to the more toxic side of, you know, masculinity in certain men's communities. And
Right.
I forget what, like, you know, like incels and kind of that whole really not very pleasant sort of men's community.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So when men's work and men's groups, there's a very strong structure, intentionality behind it. You know, okay, this is a place for things to evolve, right? To grow, to heal. Sometimes you don't know what you're getting yourself into, but you know it's a place of like development, let's call it, where some of the toxicity that you know is there in different workplaces that are dominated by men. There's no container, as we call it. It's no, this is just what happens. It's work. The containers work, but sort of it's really flimsy. So then we act. So, and I used to do this. We act from our childhood wounds.
Yeah.
However that looks, the behaviors. So there's no actual container to sort of keep things in check and to grow. And that's where men's work is different and men's groups are different. Is when you pass that sort of boundary into a container that, hey, here are men who are willing to do their work, you automatically show up differently, or you exit and you're not ready. It's like, oh no, I'm not, this isn't for me. And create whatever story you want around that.
Yeah.
It's too much of this, it's too much of that. But I haven't found in men's circles and spaces and groups the toxicity at that level, anywhere near the level out in society. Why? Because the container is set. Yeah. Yeah. Does that make sense? Is that sort of answer the question?
It totally makes sense. I mean, people are, if you're showing up at a group like that, you're of a certain mindset and motivation to do this work, and you're either going to stick with it or you're going to leave because it's not for you, right?
Yes. There's no room for too much toxicity. And if there is any that enters into our spaces, we nip it in the butt.
Do you kick people out?
Not first. That's not the first go-to. First go-to is understanding. It's like, what's really happening here? And then if it's a consistent behavior and it's breaking guidelines, or to the detriment of the group and how that group is evolving, then absolutely the space isn't for them.
Yeah. Another question I have is, you know, some of this work is getting very close to what people might do in therapy, right? And just, you know, how do you approach that? Is there a limit to where you can go with men's work that might release, I don't know, it might trigger somebody, it might release too much trauma, it might get you into a situation which needs therapy and not coaching, and just how you manage that balance, because it seems quite grey at times to me.
It can be, and it's safety is number one. The safety of the individual and the group, and depending on the level of experience and skill of the leadership of the group will depend on where that line sort of starts and ends. But it's true, like anything, there's this deeper work. And unless the leader's a trauma specialist or a therapist or whatnot, then it can lead down that path. And then it's, duty of care to say, hey, this is moving too far down that path of referring out. Like, is there somebody you can see? And that's the duty of care and taking responsibility, and also a guideline that men are aware that they're entering into a space and they take full responsibility for themselves, for their thoughts and needs. So it's both sides, and it's a important conversation though, because men's work and group isn't for every man in every minute. There's got to be some discernment.
So what you're saying, it's almost on the man who's participating that he is accepting that risk almost, that he might put some stuff out there that triggers him in a serious way. Yeah,
that's true. It's his responsibility, and that's why there are guidelines in place. And then if something does get triggered, then it's up to the leadership of that space to be able to deal with that and handle that.
Yeah.
Ideally have that man come back in to what level of calmness he can, and then refer out if needed. Like, this is, too deep for this group or time or whatever it is. We had something come up in the group this morning, a a childhood situation that myself in the leadership heard it, saw it, and was like, no, this isn't the time to dig here. This is not what this space is about. A lot of the time, just being witnessed and supported is more than enough for men and on their own journey. So,
yeah, I mean, I think the great thing with this is that it's a little bit like a stepping stone to therapy, right? And in a way, it's more accessible. It's in a group format, so it's more scalable. You can, more people could participate in it. It's most of the time, it's probably a lot cheaper. So I don't know. I think it fills a really needed space that can help a lot of men who maybe don't need to go down the route of doing therapy. Yeah.
I see it. I hear that, and I see it as sort of as a bedfellow for men with the deeper therapeutic work of therapy and doing the past work. And everyone's at different skill levels and experience levels. And some of us are more trained in different skills within the coaching world. But generally, therapy will focus on the past and coaching will focus on the future. What I've done over the years is blending both, knowing where there's limitation and risk and referring out when needed, but also helping men, if they need to, go back and heal the past. Because we need to reveal, to feel, to heal. And again, groups and one-on-ones are very different. But the power of a group in a men's group, what I've found and what I'm a huge advocate of, is the energy created by being witnessed, just being seen. Every single week, what is it that you need from us today, brother? I'll say. And the first thing 9 times out of 10 that comes out of that man's mouth will be, just sharing this is really helpful. Just sharing it is the medicine, just speaking it out and being witnessed by men that I trust, that aren't going to judge me. They're not going to try and give me advice and solve the perceived problem. They're just going to be here. And that's nurturing our feminine. So just that alone, in the energy of whatever it is, 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 men, whatever it is, that's irreplaceable. Yeah. And for me, I don't believe that any amount of one-on-one coaching and or therapy or any other modality replaces that, because it can't. It's just different. But they're both very, and I'm a huge advocate of therapy and counseling and different forms of vehicles to heal and to grow as men and as people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's you're absolutely right. There is something totally different between, being vulnerable and sharing in front of a group of other men and being vulnerable and sharing in front of one, expert, I put expert in inverted commas, therapist who might be a little aloof and, they're totally different. They're both extremely valuable. And it's, I had my, my psychiatric nurse on the podcast last week, and we were talking all about, antidepressants, mood stabilizers and that whole subject. And, these are all just tools in the arsenal, right? And we might need to use all of them. We might need to pick and choose some of them. And I think that's why this sort of thing is super important, is just to educate people about what's out there. So, if you know what a men's group is, you can go and investigate that. And maybe that's all you need. And, you do that, or you might realize, I actually need some therapy, and then I need this specific type of therapy. And then I might need to go and take these drugs for a few months. And a lot of it's just about educating people to what's out there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And everyone's on their journey at different stages. Some guys come into my world and they're happy with just dropping into a group, and just that's the level that they're needing and wanting and willing to be at. Other guys want to go deeper, and that's where the one-on-one space is. They're like, I want to really work on, myself at a deeper level, so we can go deeper in a one-on-one space, whether it's a coaching space or a therapy space. And the other beautiful thing about a group that I've found, and this happened this morning, was getting different feedback and angles of perspective from other men. Today's group was around building trust. And I just posed a question is, what does trust mean to you? One of the brothers was sort of struggling with like, you know, what it even means to him. So then all of a sudden these guys wrote in, well, chatted and spoke into the space as well. And he had 10 different viewpoints on what trust is. For him to bumper off his own experience and go, wow, that really lands, that resonates. Not so much that. So it's not just him and his stuff. He's not alone. And so often the number one thing is, I'm not alone anymore. I'm not alone. And I grew up feeling alone, feeling abandoned, even though I had a beautiful family and I played sport, but just emotionally, there was no room for that. I didn't feel safe. So my wounding is, I've been abandoned. So that's why groups, men's groups especially, have been so healing for me, is because I'm no longer abandoned. I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And here's proof. I can sit in this space and share openly, be as vulnerable as I'm willing to be, and feel fucking incredible from it, and walk away if I want with some game plan as well. Like what needs to happen next, if anything.
What does Tony Robbins think about men's groups?
Good question. I haven't heard him speak directly to men's groups. Over the years, a lot of the nuances they're similar. Like I see, like a lot of Tony's, like I've been to many of his events and I've worked with him as well, like in a crewing capacity, helping at his events. And I think here's my opinion, brother. I don't know for sure. I've never heard him speak to men's groups especially, but I would feel it may be a tool like all this is. This is a beautiful tool that men can call upon if and when they feel like they're ready.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you, you've seen his film on Netflix, right?
I have a few times. Yeah.
You weren't working at that event, were you?
I wasn't. I missed that event.
But you've been a staff member on similar events, have you?
I have. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty powerful stuff watching that film.
It is. And it's even more powerful being at that event. I can't speak highly enough of Tony's work and just the contribution he's making in the world. And when you see him behind the scenes, it's incredible. Like his desire to serve, and really he cares. Yes, there's a massive commercial machine behind what he does too. Yeah. You know, including I'm Not Your Guru, Netflix and all the sales and whatnot that they do. And that's a part of it to get his message out. But, you know, I've been grateful to be in that world for over a decade now. And the drive that he has just to support people, to serve people and to really make a difference is second to none.
Yeah. And I think that definitely comes across in that film. You see behind the scenes of just how hard he pushes himself and how hard he pushes himself, like physically and the emotional, physical toll. Like when he comes off stage, like he's like,
it's non-stop.
He's like left it all on stage, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. But highly recommend it, an event if you haven't been to one.
One day we'll see. I got enough to do with this men's work, Tim.
Yeah. Well, very different. That's a great example. Like men's work, a lot of good men's work is deepening and being present and like breath and like coming deeply into our masculine. And also, you know, understanding emotionality in the feminine. But a lot of Tony, I'm sure you've seen, like a lot of Tony's events is at like high energy. So it looks like a rock concert. And that serves in a different way. Well, that really pushed me the first few times I went. This was uncomfortable, man. I don't want to jump up and down. I don't want to dance. I don't want to be, but it helped me grow. And there's a term in men's work, and I know you know it is good, like your edge. Like, where's your edge? Like not jumping over the edge full, but like just touch your edge. And for some, you know, for a lot of men, it's dancing. Like that was very uncomfortable for me.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm 100%. I'm there. Like that's that's super uncomfortable.
Because the feminine is about dancing and movement. Yeah. Flow. So if we have a disconnected, if we're disconnected from our feminine, we're going to find it hard to move in like a dancing, flowing way. We can move and be structured. That's cool, but it's very different. So there's a little sort of take on the difference between men's work and, you know, Tony Robbins. There's a lot, but they're both beautiful tools, and, you know,
I'll stick some links in the description if people want to go watch that documentary and see what his stuff's all about. And we'll put some links to some of the men's work resources. But Yeah, look, this has been fascinating. I think it's there's so much more we could have talked about, and it's a massive subject. I didn't even get to talk about archetypes. I wanted to talk about, magicians and warriors and all that stuff. Maybe we'll do another one on that.
Yeah, that'd be great. I love archetype work. I did last year, I actually ran a workshop around those archetypes, those masculine archetypes.
Yeah.
And it's just really powerful. So yeah, if the time and space happens for that and we create it, then happy to come back and talk about that.
For sure. All right. Well, thanks, Tim.
You're so welcome, Alex. Thanks for having me. And thanks for listening for everyone out there.
So that's it for this episode. Thanks again to Tim for coming on and talking to us about men's work and men's coaching. If you are keen to learn more about it, then you check out some of the links in the podcast description. You can find out more. I would also encourage you to share the podcast with anybody that you think might be interested. And if you have a moment, just head over to iTunes and give us a rating or a review. Again, it will help us to get the podcast out there to more people that might benefit from listening to this sort of thing. Thanks again, and see you on the next episode.